Everybody's ready to do business, right? Yeah. All right, well, thank you everybody for coming to Texas NORML's Activist Training Day. Can everybody hear me okay? This is probably the 5th year we've done this, I guess, at least. I've been involved since 2008, and I think my first one was 2009, so I know that it was going on before then. And basically what we're doing is we're coming together and we're trying to learn how we go about this. How do we go about this in Texas as a group, and how do you each do it personally, and how are other people doing it already? And that's mainly what we're going to talk about and try to give you the tools. And you know, everybody's not going to go about it the exact same way, but as long as we're we know what the rules of the game are, and we know what we can and can't do, and consider what will help. That's what we hope you can take away from this. And not only take it away for yourself, but take it away in a way that you can give to other people. We want everybody that came to be the source for the people that they know, and encourage the people that they know to be the source for other people they know. And like, this is like the best Ponzi scheme, because nobody's going to lose out of it. So we're all just going to be bolstered in what we're trying to accomplish. Before you guys arrived, the board was meeting here and kind of just getting ourselves organized, and I think a lot of what we talk about, not specifically what programs we use, but on the computer, but the idea of what we're trying to do internally reaches to external people too. And so I sort of wrote, the dry erase isn't that great, but the idea was just that we have a goal, we have a common goal, whether you're a patient or a veteran specifically, or you're a farmer and you want to grow industrial hemp, or you're a farmer and you want to grow cannabis for people to use recreationally, or I don't necessarily like that word, but for people to be able to purchase in a legal retail market. Whatever your reason may be, our goals are ultimately the same. Our goals are to have freedom for consumers, for the plant itself, and for an industry surrounding it, and whatever that industry or consumer would be that you want. We all have the same goals. So mainly we're going to try to get everybody to recognize what actions you're taking, what resources you're using, and are they going to further their goals, or will they later? So even networking with people definitely meets those things, but just trying to stay focused. So that's all this is. And then on the other side of the board, I tried to just list a few random things that we could use help with. So if everybody's volunteering to do smaller and smaller parts, then we each have less to do, and we're all more involved and get more people involved. So if you have available time, or energy, or resources, or networking, I'm sure we can find a place to do it. And this is a very, very small list of the things that I have time to write. So I will turn it over to Jack shortly, but I wanted to kind of give you a little bit of a rundown of what we're going to cover today. And thank you all for coming. I know we had some people make a drive today from Waco at least, and probably others that we'll get to meet and talk and see where you're coming from. That's very, very important for what we're doing. And that's one of the things that Jax is going to talk about, how we change laws in Texas, specifically in Texas. Because we can all sit around and talk about what other states did, but what matters is what we can do within the structure of our government. And why we have to do it this way, and sort of like the why nots, or how we can't. Noelle Davis is here, and she's going to be speaking about then how you personally can use that structure that Jax talks about, and find your own voice, and help accomplish the goals that we have within the movement, using your own story, but keeping on point with what we're trying to accomplish, or what a bill could do. Then we're going to have several of our outreach directors are going to speak. And when I say outreach, I mean we're targeting specific groups of people, because that's what it's going to take in changing these laws, and creating an industry, is for people to recognize that there is no certain type of person that is engaged in this activity, just as there is no certain type of person that is targeted or that could be helped. People can be helped, and people engage in this activity, but people are more willing to listen if they relate to you. So, you know, we met a doctor recently. He's not here now, he should be later. He's reaching out to more doctors. We have specific outreach people on our board who are reaching out to targeted groups and trying to get them to relate to what we're doing. So we're going to have Vincent, who's our Director of Patient Outreach. and helps empower patients and educate on that level. We're going to have, actually, I'm not sure if Dawn or Deb is speaking on behalf of the Senior Alliance, but one of them will. So we're reaching out to seniors who are really the only group that's not increasing in favoritism. Greg is here over there, and he's our Director of Athletics, I guess. We don't tell you outreach specifically, but he's the director of our Team Hope Through Cannabis, our athletic group. So they do 5Ks and that sort of thing. And Dave Bass is here somewhere also. He'll be talking specifically about reaching out to veterans. So I consider these groups to be, they don't have separate goals, but they target specific groups, and they gather people that are in that group, and then that group is to reach out to the public. It's outreach, so not just people that are consumers or affected directly. And then we'll have J.C. Dufresne. Dufresne is, looking over everybody's heads. He has come from Houston, and he is Houston's Dallas. Oh, sorry. One of those other metropolitan cities where we have a chapter. He's his precinct chair and involved a little further than what maybe some people are ready to do now, but just to let you know that all of us as citizens have these rights and can be involved in the way that he has been in affecting the party platform, in being a precinct chair. All something citizens can be involved in, and further from that, citizens can also run for office, which our keynote speaker is doing once again for Agriculture Commissioner Kinky Friedman will be here this afternoon. And then we'll have an after party at Strange Brew. So I hope you will all join us for that and stick around and enjoy the speakers and the snacks in the back and water. And thank you for coming. Our Deputy Director, Jack Spinkle, is going to give you a little more specifics on how and why we're doing this. Thank you.
Early afternoon to each of y'all. Thank you for coming out. And we have people from Conroe, Waco, San Antonio. So it really means a lot that you guys have taken the time out of your schedule to come and be with us today. I'm going to give you a few of the kind of basics on how our government works here in Texas, therefore how we're trying to change the law. So some of you may be familiar with this, and it's a recap, but for others of you, this is super important information on how we're going to affect change in Texas. So first, let me start off with a little bit of explanation about the political and legislative landscape that we face in Texas. Due to a law change in 1997, Texas now has to change all of its drug laws at the state level. So that means that no municipality, like Austin, for example, can change their drug laws alone. It has to be a statewide change of the laws. And not every state allows for ballot initiative. Texas is one of these states that does not have ballot initiative at the state level. So therefore, we are totally reliant on our elected officials to get the job done for us here. We have our legislators meet here every 2 years for 140 days if there are no special sessions. And literally they see 10,000 bills in a legislative session. So they have a lot going on in a very short amount of time, and it's very widely spaced. The brief overline of how a bill works here is a bill would be introduced by the representative or by the senator, depending on if they're in the House or the Senate. They would try to acquire as many co-sponsors as possible, and then they basically try to lobby it to the committee that it's going to assign to. It's assigned to a committee based on the type of law code that it would change. And then the committee would either choose to hold a public hearing or not. Let's assume it goes through the public hearing. It would have public testimony, and then the committee members would vote on the bill. At that point, if it passes out of the committee, it would go to what's called the calendars committee. And basically that is getting it scheduled to be on the open floor, where all of the representatives can debate it and vote on it there. So if it makes it through calendars committee, it makes it on the floor, it passes the vote, then at that point it is handed off to the lieutenant governor and the governor to sign off on. And then at that point they can either sign it, it can be enacted by default, which means if if you don't veto this, it's going to pass. Or he can choose to veto it, he or she can choose to veto it. So that's a brief overview of how it works. So we're faced with no ballot initiative. We're faced with having to really work on our senators and our representatives currently. So how do we affect change? Because it sounds kind of daunting. You know, you look at California and they got their laws changed through ballot initiative. But there is hope. New Hampshire recently had a bill. They don't have ballot initiative, just like we don't. And it went through both the House and the Senate. And I think that it's currently on the governor's desk to be signed. So we can do it with the system that we have in place. It's just going to take a lot of work to get it done. So you'll see in the back over there, there's an activist training guide, and it goes more in depth about some of the things that I'm going to speak about. So I recommend that you grab one. It'll also show you how you can find out who your representatives are and who your senator is as well, so that you can then have their contact information and start reaching out to them. But basically, today you've already started the process. You're here, you're interested, you're dedicated, and you obviously want to make a change because you took your precious time to come here and learn something about how to change it. So the first way to get involved is to register to vote. Because we're relying on our representatives and our senators, these are people that we vote for. So it's super important that you're registered to vote. And additionally, you can get involved in your primaries or your conventions, and make sure that at the very, very beginning level, whenever you're at, let's say, the Republican, the Democratic, or the Libertarian primaries, you would vote for, let's say, 2 people are running for U.S. representative or Texas representative. You would want to find out where they stand on the cannabis issue and vote for the one that you agree with the most, so that you have a good cannabis candidate on the ballot. Then at that point, you would need to vote in November and make sure that that person that you're behind actually gets elected into office. Make sure your friends are registered to vote, make sure they know to vote, make sure that you're giving them information on where the candidates stand. And this summer, we're actually going to put out our second ever Texas NORML Voters Guide, where we will put 6 important cannabis questions to the candidates. We'll compile their responses for you, and we will publish those so that you can know where they stand and what kind of answers they've given us. So that's another thing that when it comes out, make sure you pass that along to your friends through social media, emails. You can actually, print them out and hand them out if you want. We've had people who will print out, 50 of them and go take them to the grocery store. That's why the League of Women's Voters Guide, I've taken them to the library before and left them here. People are really open to it if you come at it with a respectful manner, a nice open smile. We have to remember that, that's another thing that's important in engaging people, is breaking the cannabis stereotype that so many people have. We're not your typical, stereotypical pothead. A lot of us are professionals, we're mothers, we're seniors. There's a wide variety of people that are interested, and we need to make sure that we're out there representing each person in a respectful manner. I would also say that once they're elected, they go and they kind of go to their home office and get ready for the legislative session. So that's the perfect time, right before they're busy, but yet right after they've been elected, to reach out to them. Call their home office, make an appointment, go meet with them or their aide, let them know that this is a big issue for you and that you want to know that they're going to support it. And then continue to reach out to them. Once the legislative session has started, you can follow us on Facebook or get on our newsletter, and we actually send up action alerts. You need to email this person, here's a script, or make sure you call this person, here's this information. This bill is going to a hearing, this is when it is. So make sure that you stay tuned to that. There's also a website called MyTLO, and you can sign in and follow bills or research bills, and you can look up your representative and see, hey, this representative seems really into environmental stuff. Maybe I'll talk to him about him, because of how good it is for the environment. So you can kind of do some research on your elected representatives and then tailor your argument or your discussion to what their interests are. And on my TLO, you'll be able to do that. You'll also be able to set up where you get alerts on our bills. So in this upcoming session, we're hoping to have the same 2 bills that have been introduced along with hopefully a few more, and you can actually go on there and follow them. So you get an email as soon as it's been assigned to committee or as soon as the vote has been taken. Last year, we actually had our medical bill come up and we had 36 hours notice before the hearing. So it's really important to stay tuned to that because you could miss that quite easily. I would also say if you really want to make sure that you're coming to the hearings and you're giving testimony, I would go ahead and write your testimony now. You get 3 minutes. Go ahead and write what you want to tell them about the medical issue, a 3-minute piece. Go ahead and write what you would want to tell them about decrypt, a 3-minute piece. So that when the time comes, if we have short notice, you're ready. You're ready to go with your speech, and you can come down to the Capitol and speak on behalf. We're going to have people speaking about how you can get prepared for the hearings and the meetings, so I'll leave that for them. But I'll also mention that we have a lobby campaign. We're working with several different drug policy groups throughout Texas, and we've hired a lobby team, and basically we're going to use them to help identify who's interested in supporting, where they stand on it, how far are they willing to go on what bill, and then also to kind of gauge the landscape of, where do we think each bill is going to go this session. I think with how the tide is turning throughout the country, we've got 2 legal states, 20 medical states, and I want to say it's 16 states with some sort of decriminalization. I think that it's going to happen sooner than we think. Now, we have to wait every 2 years, so that's a bummer for us. But if we keep at it, in the next year, we could see 5 more states go legal. Because there are many states that have those type of bills in the works. So our officials are really watching what's happening in these other states. And we can make that part of our testimony. The fact that Colorado has already sold over $100 million in retail sales, and so they're going to make a lot off of taxes. I think that they said that they've already made enough off of taxes to pay for the children's free lunch program for the next 70 years. I like to always point out in Texas, the low estimate is that we spend on average $10,000 per cannabis arrest. That's a simple possession charge. Yet in 2012, we only spent $8,500 to educate one child for 1 year. That's unacceptable. And these are the type of arguments that you can come to them with. Remember, we don't have to convince someone that cannabis is a magical, wonderful cure-all plant, but we can convince them that prohibition is bad. The problem is the law, not the plant. And this is what we need to keep in mind, tailoring our arguments to exactly what their point is instead of overwhelming them with information. So keep that in mind. Back to the lobby campaign, we're hoping in 2015 to have medical decrypt and a legalization bill, and we'll be pushing those through pretty hard. So if you want to become a donor, you can become a donor and back, but make sure that you stay tuned to what's happening with that too. We're going to probably have another lobby day as well, where we all went up to the Capitol, and you'll see the Texas education packet back there. We distributed that along with the scientific and clinical application book. And if we keep doing that, we keep educating them, they no longer can hide behind ignorance. They know what the facts are, and they're going to have to act on them. And as long as we keep it respectful and educated, we're going to continue to make progress. And that's what we need to do, continue to make progress. Let's keep our eyes on 2017 for real significant change, but I think if cards fall right, perhaps we could see something very limited happen in 2015, which would be really awesome. We've seen a lot of polls come out that Texans are in support of, I think it's 79% are in support of just general drug law reform. 61% want marijuana laws changed, and 58% want to legalize it in Texas. These are Texans that are speaking out for this, so I think that we'll start seeing change. And then to give you a little bit of history on what's been going on here for the last decade, TX NORML was originated back in the 1970s, and we've been, working on and off throughout those years. In the last decade, we've really been pushing full force. We've had a great executive director who worked for us for the last decade. His name was Josh Trng. He made a lot of real changes along with other groups in the area. So in 2013, we had these two bills. We've got the medical bill, which is an affirmative defense bill. This bill has been put forth in every legislative session for the last decade. Basically, it protects patients that if they are arrested, that they would have an affirmative defense to defend themselves with. And it would also protect doctors from losing their license for discussing cannabis with their patient. That was the medical bill that got a hearing on short notice. The hearing went really well. I don't think anyone even came to speak against the bill, but we had, I think, 36 people there speaking for it. Unfortunately, the bill did not pass out of committee, but there was some very favorable discussion, so that was really good. And we also had HB 184, which is the decrypt bill, and that would lower the penalty of possession of cannabis for under an ounce. That bill has also been put in every session for the last decade. It went to the Criminal Jurisprudence Committee last year, and it actually was voted out of the committee on 6-3 vote, and it was a bipartisan vote. You know, Republicans and Democrats listened to the talking points that we had, and they both resonated with it, and that's really important. So that was able to make it to Calendar's committee. However, it was towards the end of the session, and unfortunately it did die in committee. But for the decrypt bill, we actually had representatives making our arguments for us. So during the hearing, there was a couple representatives that were just tearing apart the gateway theory and all this stuff. So when you have representatives actually taking your side at a hearing in Texas, that's when you know that change is coming. And we started back in the 70s, that's when we had to play, I'm going to steal this from you, Vincent. We had to play in the beginning by the book. We had to get things done right, play by the book. In the middle game, in the 80s and 90s, we had to use magic. We had to just make it happen. And now we're starting to be at the beginning of the end, and we're really going to start seeing change. And this is when we have to be a machine. We have to all work together, we have to be educated, well-oiled, and be a machine that's going to go up to the Capitol and be unstoppable. We've had so much media coverage since January 1st that it's been insane. I think Texas was second in media coverage only to Colorado. That's amazing. So when people say it's never going to happen in Texas, it's never going to happen with that attitude. But you know what? I'm going to go ahead and do it with my good attitude. How about that? So on that note, I believe that Cheyenne would like to come up and introduce the next speaker. Thank you for listening to me, you guys, and you'll find more in-depth information about the activist training information on that back table. So please do grab some. Thank you.
Thank you, Jax. Thanks for going into kind of what's going on nationally too, because I have to say that's when people say never in Texas, I think they're only focusing on what's happening in Texas or who they know or the lawmakers in Texas, and that we don't live in a vacuum. What's happening outside of the state is affecting the conversation here and helping it progress, because just like alcohol prohibition, it's not as if this is going to stand for one state to be making millions and the others to be calling it a felony in some cases. And thankfully, Noelle is still with us to be witness to things changing. She has been an advocate for drug policy reform for a decade. And she has managed state and federal campaigns, and I think she's pretty happy to see some changes. And I've learned certainly a lot from working with her the past few years, and I hope that you can too. Maybe you can teach me how to adjust this line. But she's going to kind of talk about how to find your voice within the structure that Jax talked about. Thanks.
You adjusted it perfectly. It's right to my height.
But I don't know if it'll stay. That was the problem.
I won't touch it. Okay. So hi, I'm Noelle, and as Cheyenne said, I've been at this game in Texas for quite some time, and I am thrilled that finally the tide is turning. Things are different. For the last decade, it's been rough. I started a group called Texans for Medical Marijuana about a decade ago, and I would go to the Capitol, and some people were very nice, some people were very rude, some people would laugh. I would bring people in wheelchairs, patients who obviously were struggling, and the representatives wouldn't even look at them or talk to them. It was fascinating to watch the behavior. And I've learned a lot in this team. I like what Jack said, and I feel like that's what something I'm going to say again. We'll probably repeat several things because we're going to need to shift all of our energy and how we have been coming at this, because it's been kind of a push, kind of a fight. And now it's shifting, we're at the beginning of the end. And so the energy is, the tide is on our side now. So it's not pushing anymore, it's riding the wave. It's bringing our positive energy, bringing our best energy forward, and not letting ourselves get bogged down or take it personally when the representatives who still don't support it, and there are many in this state, when they don't give us the response that we need. So there are lots of opportunities to educate elected officials, and there's different levels of elected officials. As Jax was saying, our main target here should be the Texas state representatives. So that's the state senator and state representative. You also have representatives in Congress who represent you in Washington, D.C. They're important, but if we build support in the state legislature, that's going to travel up to Congress. So it can only help if you connect in your communities and you connect more at the grassroots level and within your precincts, as will be talked about more later. It's finally safe to talk about marijuana being safer than alcohol, being safer than other drugs, safer than pharmaceuticals, a safer choice. And for a long time, many people have been ashamed to talk about that, to say the truth, because of being laughed at, because of being afraid of being arrested. And I'm sure there's still a lot of fear around that, but there's space now with Colorado, Washington, Uruguay. It's a different world. So I encourage you all to think about that. If there's something in you that is afraid to say that you support marijuana legalization to certain people in your life, just think about that. Just feel into why are you afraid to share that truth? Why are you afraid to say something? You might not change. You might not decide to talk to that person, and that's okay. But I encourage you just to think about it and see, why am I holding back? And for some people, as we move forward, some people are not going to be ready to listen. And they may never. There will probably always be a percentage of our population who thinks that marijuana is the devil, literally. That marijuana is evil. That the plant is, they won't look at the facts. They will continue to believe marijuana can kill you. And that's okay. We have to be able to accept that because we're not going to change everyone's opinion. It's not our job. So trying to discern where to put our attention as we move forward and not feel like you just got to harp on somebody and keep going back because then you're wasting your energy. So in this time, we've got from now about a year, literally, at the very earliest, until any bill that Jax was talking about would even be up for any kind of vote in the state legislature. They will begin the session next January, early January of 2015, but then they kind of mess around for a few weeks and congratulate themselves on being elected and decide who gets to be in what committee and do a lot of behind-the-scenes negotiating. So it takes a little while before the game gets started, before they actually start to meet in committees and start to consider bills. So we've got some time. And this is the first time since I've been doing this work that we have a shot of something passing. I don't know what it could be. My hope is something addressing the need of medical patients, which to me would also include like a decrim bill, a solid decriminalization, penalty reduction, penalty restructuring, however you want to say it to whichever audience. I think for the first time it's really possible. So we've got time in this year to build relationships, build trust, to assess our own personal strengths as an activist, our own interests. Why are you doing this? Why is this so important to you? Is this your number one issue? If it is, this is my number one issue. Anyone else? Is this their number one issue that they are most passionate about? All right, yes. Then I encourage you to really be strategic with your time around this and dedicate whatever time you can each week, each month, each day. Still taking care of yourselves, getting rest, nourishing yourself, but knowing we've got a year before anybody can take a vote. Slowing down, looking at what could I do? What are my best talents? Am I a good writer? Am I a good public speaker? Am I good at networking? What gifts can I bring? What do I want to say about this? And again, moving intentionally, figuring out what you bring to the table and learning the rules of the game, as Jax was saying, to see where you can then fit in. So seriously, like going on the Texas Legislature online website, if you're comfortable in reaching out to your representative. Some people, that might not be your thing. You might not be able to sit across the table from someone who you know votes differently than you would on many things. It might stress you out too much. You might not be able to handle them looking at you like, because some of them will. And if you can't handle that, know that about yourself and don't go to that meeting. Don't open yourself up to that. Figure out a different way. There's many other ways you could be effective. You could write to them instead of having that meeting. A handwritten letter is a very powerful tool. I'll go into more about what kind of a structure that you could use. So think about your strengths and weaknesses. But I do encourage you, whether you decide to go and meet with the person, the people who represent you or not, to find out who they are and find out what, as Jax was saying, what other issues do they support? What might, if you met with them or wrote to them, what might you be able to thank them for? Even if you're a blue dog Democrat, yellow dog Democrat, and they're a hardcore elephant Republican, there's probably something that you could agree on. There's probably something that in their time in the legislature that you could thank them for. And that's we're trying to build relationships. We're trying to do the opposite of what prohibition does. Prohibition is war on ourselves. Prohibition is violence. Prohibition is harmful. Prohibition is death and destruction. We, being in our integrity, being with a clean intent, I am trying, and I hope you will also, try to move from love. Try to move from the opposite of war. I'm guessing you're here because you love this plant, because you see cannabis for its healing properties. You see cannabis for the good that it can offer to the planet. So bring that love through in your communications. We need to do the opposite of the war path that has been being pushed. It's very fear-based. It's making people ashamed to say what they feel, say what they believe, to say the truth. So we're undoing a deep knot in our society that's been with us for 100 years now. It's a long time. So when we talk about our personal story, I got active in this issue because I've been a cannabis consumer since I was a teenager. I chose cannabis over alcohol. My parents didn't encourage me directly to do that, but they did a good job of scaring me of the dangers of alcohol. And some friends were experimenting with marijuana, and I tried it, and I ended up being the girl who drove my drunk friends home. But then as I got older, early 20s, I had friends and family getting caught up in the criminal justice system. And I started to see how the system was really harmful, really hurting their lives, not helping them. People who had problems with addiction being treated like criminals, and that really bothered me. My own personal use, that hadn't motivated me to do anything. But then watching other people I cared about get chewed up and spit out by the system and end up worse, that started getting me concerned, upset, wanting to figure out what I could do. And then a couple years later, I met someone who had HIV, and he explained how consuming cannabis helped him keep his food and medications down. And that really hit me. Like, this is life and death now. This is not just for fun. This is life and death. And it still gets me that we're even having to have this conversation. But we are. So, come back to acceptance. This is what it is. And I tell you that because when I've met with legislators, these are the snippets that I've shared. I try to keep it brief, but figuring out, like, what, for you, what are the things that have happened to you or to people you love that make you feel passionate and want to speak out? So, with that, when you're preparing to meet with a representative, I find it's helpful to try to follow, for me, a format to make sure I get in everything I want to say and keep it brief. So I believe that a clear communication has 4 parts. What you observe about something, what you think about it, what you feel, and what you need. Knowing that you might not be able to get what you need, but still being able to express these things. So, when we talk about what we observe, observation would be, what is your story? That's your story. What have you observed over your life that makes this issue something important for you to speak about? Being able to articulate to a representative in an op-ed piece for a newspaper, in a chat room, whatever, being able to articulate, what have you observed? Why is this important? What are the facts that you've learned? One fact is, we have a problem. This prohibition is a problem. That's a big observation. Marijuana prohibition is a problem. It's not working. You've observed solutions. What's happening in Colorado? What's happening in Washington, Uruguay, other places starting to pop up around our country. We have solutions that you've observed. And I want to reiterate what Jack said. This is, an original meeting, especially with the legislator, is not the time to tell them all the facts you know and to overwhelm. It's just a beginning relationship building. And part of that is sharing your story so they can understand where you're coming from. So don't let the observation part go on too long. And then next would be, what do you think? What is your observation, based on these observations, what do you think we should do next? Or what do you think of what you've observed? Texas is wasting money. Our economy is being harmed by putting so much emphasis on criminal justice instead of healthcare, education, public health, and I'm forgetting the one. We're wasting money. We're wasting time. We're wasting resources. So that's what I think and what I have said to representatives when I met with them. What do you feel is the next step? Some people, I feel heartsick. This is horrible. I feel like this is not justice. We're not doing justice. You might say you feel afraid for your health, your own personal health. You might feel afraid for your child who might need this medicine. You might feel frustrated that we're not moving towards solutions, real solutions, more quickly. Being able to articulate your feelings around this. And then what do you need? And again, I want to make sure we understand when I say when you present what you need, I hope you can be in balance, be in a place where you can be ready for the other person to not be able to give you what you need. There are representatives in this county, and I'll go into a little more examples soon, who are not ready, even in Travis County, to give us what we need. And that's okay. But as more and more of us start to say what we need, they're going to get influenced in the positive direction, or one of you in this room or someone from their district will end up running for office and might unseat them. This issue over time, as we build, it might become a decisive issue in elections. Who knows, maybe even this cycle, I don't know. So, what do we need? You could say, I need you to tell me your position on this issue. I need to understand, how you would vote as of now if there was a medical marijuana bill before you, if there's a decrim bill, full legalization. And I intend to start meetings from now on asking for full legalization. Because I think we start with absolutely what we want, which will protect everyone, which is the best option, full legalization. So that's going to be my ask. I need to know, what is your position? Or I need to know, will you support a legalization bill? And if the meeting's a little tense, or you can tell they've already told you, I do not support, calmly, from your grounded place of not taking things personally, I need to know why you're opposed. I need to know what information could I bring you to help you understand this issue better. So, again, they might not even be able to tell you that. And then you'll have some good information. You'll be learning a lot about different parts of the system. And once you've said all these things, and ideally keeping it brief, keeping that whole clear communication 5 minutes or less, then it's time for you to listen and really practice listening. Because for better or worse, that elected official is the one who will have the opportunity to make the vote. And so they have this position of power, they are representing you, and we need to listen to them and find out where they are. They might be really ahead they might be like, yes, I'm ready, I'm already planning to author such and such. That's great, then how can I help you? If they're opposed, listen and understand that that's where they are. And try to respect that. Because they've had a very different set of circumstances, obviously, in their life to get them to that belief from where you are. That doesn't make them bad. That doesn't make them wrong. It's just what is, and they're doing their best. So, in considering the form of your message, like how you come to this message, how you form your clear communication, I encourage you to really be impeccable with your word as you're talking with this person, or as you're thinking about what you want to say to them. Don't lie, ever, to an elected official. Don't exaggerate. We need to be really, as Jack said, like, people have stereotypes still about this issue. So we've got to be more on the up and up than ever of telling the truth, not exaggerating. If you don't know something, that's great, because that gives you an opportunity to, if you intend to follow up, to to say, okay, I don't know, but I'll find out and I'll get back to you. So that's, again, relationship building. But don't say that unless you really intend to follow up with them. Then don't make assumptions. Ask questions. Because again, we don't know this person's story. We don't know where they're coming from. We don't know why. They could have had horrible experiences with marijuana when they were younger. I know my representative, I've moved, but my last representative, Paul Workman, a rep from Travis County, Republican, I met with him briefly about a year ago on this issue around the bills that were in the legislature, and he's very closed. He's not open, as of a year ago, to this, to decrim medical anything. So I asked him why. And he's hearing from people in his district who have, one gentleman he named, who moved his family from California to Texas to get away from medical marijuana. So that's his community. His community is coming from a very different place. So I just listened respectfully, and I got information. And I knew, okay, there's no need to take this conversation any further. Smile, thank you, and I appreciated knowing that. So now I'm sharing that with you. So if any of you are in Paul Workman's district, maybe you're a better person to talk to him. Maybe you're a veteran. Paul Workman is a veteran. Maybe you're somewhere, maybe you're connected to the church community. There's someone else who might be a better connector, and that's okay. It's really important that we don't take any of this personally when people don't understand. I can't stress that enough. And it's hard. It's hard for me. It's hard for all of us. Like, that's the challenging thing because we're so passionate. We know the truth. We know the facts. Is it obvious? It's not obvious to everybody. So being patient and not taking it personally. I was really happy in my visit with Representative Workman. That was a great opportunity for me to not take it personally. Because he was very stressed. I could tell his energy. He did not want to be meeting with me. But he did. And he was respectful. And I stayed respectful. And so, that leaves the door open for new people to come in. I didn't blow the meeting and take it personally and say, well, you're a big jerk. How could you not even consider this? That's not helpful. And always doing our best. We're going to make mistakes as we move along. So being patient with ourselves. We're going to get triggered. We're going to have judgments against the people who don't understand. So when that happens, try to move through it, let it go, and come back to, okay, wait, what's the goal? We're trying to move the energy forward again in a positive way. So that starts with us as individuals, as getting our intent, our voices clear and clean, and not being negative. It's not easy, but we can always come back to do our best, start another day. And if you decide to set a meeting with a representative, and you don't want to do it alone, I encourage you to do it in a small group, not too many people, other folks who are also from your district. Or someone who might not be from your district, but might be an example might share their story personally of how they've been affected. But keep it to small groups so, again, folks aren't overwhelmed. And I'll just end with, we are not alone. Sometimes I felt very alone in Texas on this issue. But look at how many people are in this room and know what is happening around the world that is just starting to bubble up. And it's going to take time. So we need to be patient, but know that we're on the right side of history. That I'll share one quote that inspires me in my activism that a Unitarian minister, Theodore Parker, said, "The moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice." And so we, in this room, are the people helping to bend the arc towards justice. So I thank you so much for coming out. Thank you for your time and attention, and let's do this.
directors, Vincent Lopez. He's the director of patient outreach for Texas NORML. But before he came to Texas NORML, he was already expending his resources, his energy, and time on Austin 420, which is a local publication he puts out. And so he was already active. That covers activism and music in Austin. And now he's also formed a group, a patient empowerment group, Patient Alliance for Cannabis Therapeutics, or PACT. So Vincent is going to talk to you guys about how he got involved and how you can be involved, and sort of an example of what Noel was talking about, where he has found his voice, and now he's not only speaking out for himself and being a representative for Texas NORML and for patients, one of the reasons that we should have alternatives, but he's empowering other people to do the same and teaching them how to do it. Thank you, Vincent.
Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me? As Director of Patient Outreach and publisher of the Austin 420, it has been my honorable duty and intent to push the awareness of cannabis and its numerous medicinal and therapeutic potentials. Now, before we can become better advocates, we must obtain the knowledge and thoroughly understand the process of how the Texas legislature operates. Remember, we cannot lead ourselves onto the battlefield unless we are familiar with the place of its terrain and its political climate. It takes much patience and understanding the mindset of one going through the trial of disease and disability, or what I often call the dragon of consumption. The illness can take on levels greater than what we could ever imagine. It can be the equivalency of climbing, conquering mountains, the equivalency of war, the equivalency of fighting personal demons, of desperation and fear. Throughout the course of life, we have all learned and understood that there is no greater price than the price of freedom, regardless of what it's threatened by. When it comes to illness, it is an act of consumption, an act of a non-discriminate nature that can affect our families, friends, co-workers, our children, and even ourselves. As a patient myself, and many others, we know all too well about the dragon of consumption, the sacrifice to its afflictions that can be detrimental to that of life, the body, mind, and soul. Not many understand how disease and disability can dominate one's day. It's what establishes the difficulty of the day and how we must cope to get through that day. The consumption that reminds one of their difficulty and all that they should feel. As patients, we know the freedom to live life when not bogged down by the routines and limitations of our condition, and take advantage of those opportunities as they arise. We know the sacred value of our physical abilities and how they can easily be taken away from us. Coping with a terminal condition requires the acceptance of what one cannot change, the true test of courage and the lengths we're willing to go through to overcome each and every obstacle we face. We all must make sacrifices in order to live the best quality of life we can. We all make sacrifices, but the biggest sacrifices we are all making is in coming out of that cannabis closet, risking our freedom to stand up for what we believe in. While the cannabis closet is quickly fading as more and more continue to come out, this is one aspect that still greatly affects the vast majority of people here in our home state of Texas. It's been amazing and quite inspirational to see the number of patients, parents, veteran seniors, and individuals in general who have found empowerment by not being consumed by it, but by overcoming it. The emotions of fear and intimidation are all too real and can be quite overwhelming when stepping out of that cannabis closet. But nothing compares to the weight one carries by not coming out, by not saying anything, by living life in secret. The way I see it, if there's an answer for our pain, for our own peace of mind, then no longer shall we stay silent. This is my body, and how I choose to alleviate my pains within my own body is solely up to me. It is only I who can find what is necessary to find comfort in this body. It's all about expressing our own truth to power and describing how this act of prohibition has affected us personally, and how this flower of cannabis has been extremely effective for our own quality of life. If we ever expect to release ourselves from the entrapment of isolation, desperation, and fear, then we cannot suffer the repercussions they bring onto us. It's in how we build our inner strengths and our spirit that enable us to overcome these demons, that our fight becomes so impassioned and courageous. Remember, fear is a sickness that can keep us from so much, a sickness that can inhibit us from what we can't comprehend, a sickness that can mask the very essence of our true courage. This is why we must continue to expand our efforts by reaching out to those who suffer, to those who could not be here today, to those who've been neglected, abused, and misunderstood, to those who are consciously unaware of their true potential, who've been silent of the medicinal truth. For success to transpire, I consider 3 factors to be necessary. Firstly, an awareness of our own strengths and weaknesses. Secondly, having an accurate understanding of the process of legislation. And thirdly, by maintaining our composure and having a higher aim than just momentary satisfaction. Each one of us has a soul with desires and wishes, and we have to understand them in order to discover our spirit and find our way. It is my belief that a certain manner is required in how we choose to represent ourselves, that a certain etiquette is required in how we choose to react, respond, and retort, and that a certain discipline is required in how we choose to compose ourselves and our actions. It's of great importance that we evolve to the level that is required and stay focused and intent to the sole objective that not only fuels our purpose, but fuels the truth that we embody. Now, when it comes to how we plan to attack the upcoming legislative session, I'm willing to work with anyone, but my efforts have also garnered to working more with patients, which is why I created the patient support and empowerment group called PATH, Patient Alliance for Cannabis Therapeutics. Taking that first step to come out is truly where the first act of empowerment begins. Therefore, our focus is to encourage and invoke patient interaction, and to bring forth the correct knowledge, manner, and discipline, and etiquette required in addressing the Texas legislature regarding proper, safe, and adequate cannabis legislation. Most patients' concerns go much further than just medical cannabis. I'm hoping that PAC can also provide some comfort, guidance, understanding, and consolation to an already stressful and painful situation. PAC is a safe, sacred, and compassionate place to open up, confide, share our experiences, trials, and successes. PAC supports each individual in fighting their individual battles, in preserving hope, and offering companionship. No one wins every battle, but one can learn, find healing, grow, and achieve lasting victory if given a safe place to share what's going on inside. There are some great things to accomplish together, but the only way to maintain that is by organizing and disciplining ourselves to the greater picture that extends beyond ourselves. To become empowered, we must increase our capacity to make choices and to transform those choices into desired outcomes and actions. Excuse me. Empowerment is a process of awareness that leads to acceptance, that leads to knowledge, manner, and self-discipline. We master ourselves by overcoming the personal demons that threaten our own health and happiness, that attack, overrun, and rule over us if we do not learn to confront and subdue them. By clarifying what really matters and seeing our negative and destructive impulses for what they truly are, one can find the freedom and self-control to become fully empowered. The greater our self-esteem, our self-confidence, the lower our fears and intimidation will inevitably be. Spiritual warfare is not about rashly marching forward to conquer the world with our own agenda, which is why we need to think of the big picture and how our actions of today greatly affect the outcomes of tomorrow and future generations to come. If you've been around me long enough, you'll often hear me refer to the Texas legislature as a game of chess, a formalized contention of wits, discipline, patience, and strategy in which equal chance is offered to players to uncover truth by interpreting a world governed by natural laws in which interpretation of one will triumph over the interpretation of another. Not the strongest move is always the best one, but the one that causes the most problems to your opposition. With each move one makes, we encounter a new perspective altogether. Under surging emotions, we sometimes lose concentration and stop objectively evaluating what's taking place. If I'm relaxed, balanced, and in spirit, then I can concentrate on the moves that are at play. Nervous energy is the ammunition we take into any mental battle. If you don't have enough of it, your concentration will fail. By abandoning our anxieties, we can discover the truth to say what is necessary. It's not about turning away out of fear or denial, but about facing the dragon eye to eye and conquering the ultimate chess game from within. This is what makes us stronger. Got one more thing to do here. To close things out here, my final statement is basically no longer shall we suffer the depravities of our fears, of our silence, as there shall be a day when our personal dragons of consumption will finally be slain and defeated. Thank you.
They can benefit from the alternative to cannabis, cannabis as an alternative, the same way that Vincent can. But they are one of the groups that we're not seeing favoritism from. So it's very important that we're reaching out. So we welcome Dawn in helping us do that and encouraging more people to do the same, to reach out to our senior members. And please, if the Senior Alliance is not just for seniors either, that's one thing that we certainly encourage. Vincent can help you if you want to talk to other patients about this. Maybe if you're not a patient. And Dawn and Deb and Betty can help you talk to other seniors. So even if you're not a senior, those are points that you want to educate yourself about when you talk to people that could resonate with that message. Thank you, Dawn.
I'm also old. It's okay. We're old. You'll all get there, trust me. My name is Dawn Brooks, and I'm 62 years old. And I am the face of a senior normal person. I have been involved with cannabis use probably before a lot of you were even thought of. So I go way, way, way back. I'm an activist at heart. I've been involved in other activist groups. Those groups kind of kind of wayward with me. And I got involved with NORML about a year ago. And when I met Cheyenne and Bianca for dinner, I let them know that I was really looking for something to ground my passion, because my passion was asleep for a really long time. So, what better cause? I can't imagine what better cause to get involved in, and I was lucky enough to start going to meetings, meeting with a lot of folks who are in NORML, and what was really lacking, as Cheyenne said, is an alliance that reaches out to folks who are 55 or older, but certainly we are not, we are more inclusive than exclusive, and I'll tell you why. But the bottom line is that as a group, demographically, seniors are still in the closet. And, you know, demographically, we've got the resources, we've got the time. A lot of us are retired, a lot of us are still working. So I understand where people who are of age, who are still working, may have some sort of reservation about coming out. However, it's not necessarily coming out and being very, very bold about it, but what's important for the Alliance is to make sure that we inform seniors of what's going on and the importance of them speaking to other people in their peer group who will understand the need for the change in legislation and DREG. The thing is that we as a group just have not been reached. And there are groups, the Senior Tour out of Florida, which is headed by Robert Platshorn. He basically started the Florida Reform Bill. He's been very, very active in going around educating folks, making sure that everybody is informed of the use, of the benefits of the use for seniors. As Cheyenne mentioned, we cross over with a lot of alliances. With the PACT, there's an awful lot of folks who are of age, who are the senior age, who do, they're basically in a position right now where they're suffering from a lot of ailments that would be benefited if they were to use some sort of medical use of cannabis. Those things include MS. There's been studies on Alzheimer's and the use of cannabis with Alzheimer's patients and reducing the severity of it. So the bottom line is that our main focus is really to get the seniors out of the closet. And once they're out of the closet, to talk to other people who are in their peer group, to, again, pull them into the fold and to be able to spread the word. We did have our first meeting in February, and it was very well attended. We saw a lot of new faces that were in the particular group. And what we had was really, after presentation by Dave Gass on the senior, or the Veterans Alliance, but basically what we did was we had a roundtable discussion as to why folks were involved and how they felt they could really add to the movement and add to getting out the word. And, you know, there were a lot of different people that were there and why they were there. There was one woman who worked in a nursing home, and she was actually a nutritionist who really wants to be able to, at some point, nutritionally feed folks at some point. And, you know, again, with edibles and being able to help people to reduce their pain level and to reduce their suffering. I mean, certainly that would be one alternative that was her goal. My goal is to really super reach people who don't understand the benefits. I have had a sister-in-law who's had cancer at 50. I had a friend who had 20% of her lung taken out due to lung cancer. And during their recovery, had it not been for their use, they would have been really, truly miserable. So I speak out for people who necessarily can't speak. And I think taking that risk, I'm still employed. I still have an employer that might say to me, what are you doing? It's still illegal. And I would have to defend myself. And it would be okay. If they let me go, I'm so close to retirement now. I'm just so please. So the bottom line is that, you know, I just do think that it's so important for us to be speaking out as seniors and being more inclusive. How are we going to do this? Well, I have big plans for the spring. I think what I'd like to do is infiltrate a lot of very small clubs, garden clubs, talk about hemp, kind of like get involved, back doorway, and spread the word that way. Again, the use of hemp and legalization of growing of hemp is also an important issue, and we as seniors need to understand the absolute positive uses of it. And again, that's just one thing. Going to a gardening club and talking to them is perfectly normal. Got it? But, so I do think that, you know, there is such a population that can be reached out to and can be spoken to. Okay, so the bottom line is that we do want to get seniors out of the closet. We want them to get more involved, and we also want them to know about the legislative process and making sure that they do get out. Their vote counts, everyone's vote counts. And whether you be a senior or whether you be 25 years old, it makes no difference. You need to get out and vote. You need to know the issues. You need to know your candidates. And that's another real important stronghold that we have, that you know, we are getting out and we are talking more to seniors in with that respect. We do want to be inclusive also in this particular alliance. Not that others aren't, because they all are. But inclusive means that if you're a caretaker and you don't know how to speak to someone who you're caretaking for about the benefits and the use of a cannabis product that would perhaps help them, we want to be able to help them speak to their care person, I guess. Your caregiver, care person, okay. And then the other thing is that people who are younger coming to the meeting, we can talk to them. As seniors, and being able to, if they're having difficulties talking to folks who are older, grandparents, parents, who they may see an ailment that they have, that they may have the benefits of cannabis, we certainly want to be able to address those issues too for young people. So, you know, as I say, we're not exclusive at all. We really, really want to be able to include all. So, where do you go? Okay, our next meeting will be in April. Please like us on Facebook. You don't have to be a senior to like us. We like you, so you like us. And so the bottom line is it's on Facebook, it's Texas Normal Seniors, and just go and click it, and you can just follow us. And we also provide information on the webpage, on the Facebook page about what's going on in other states. We try to feed as much information as to what's happening not only at the state level, but also on senior level. And what's ironic was I did some research for this meeting, and I started going through looking to see if I could pull the demographics for seniors and who exactly was out of the closet. And it's the latest article I could find was 2006. And, you know, where's the research here, guys? You know, we're 2014 now, and I'm a little disappointed that the statistics haven't been updated to include that particular demographic, but it hasn't. So that may be another project that we may be able to kind of track down. We also want to, again, be inclusive and give any information about the Silver Tour and what's going on in Florida, what's going on in other states, what's going on in Colorado, what's going on in Washington State, Alaska. We've got so much going on. It's happening so fast. Happening every day. You're going to find something new in the paper. You're going to find some new comment, new law going in, new proposition. Keep your eyes open, whether you be, 55 or, like I said, 25. Keep your eyes open. There's a lot of stuff going on, and things are happening fast, fast, fast. So in essence, our next meeting will be April 12th. Like us on Facebook. We'll have the venue of where it will be. It'll be in South somewhere. We're not exactly sure where. We think we know where it is, and we also think we know where the venue is going to be, or the meeting is going to be about, but we haven't confirmed everything else because we're kind of laid back, and we do our thing. Betty Grimes is involved, and wave hi, Betty. And over there is Deb Martin. Deb Martin's also involved. So the three of us kind of like pull things together, and we're just trying to make this thing happen, and we're just starting up, so please, any questions or any suggestions you have for us, we're welcome to take them. Just shoot us a note on the Facebook page, just like a little note to us, and it'll be, we'll get back to you, certainly. Appreciate all you guys coming. Thank you so much, and please.
Outreach director is Greg, and Greg is our athletic director, and that doesn't mean he's like trying to make you whip you into shape, but we do have an athletic group, Team Hope Through Cannabis. Destiny is wearing those shirts right there. So and we'll be selling those later as well at the after party. But basically, our athletic group is seeking to break the stereotypes, and they're out in the public eye, wearing these shirts and saying, we're up at 8 in the morning doing a 10K. What are you doing? If there's enough of them, surely people can notice that, right? And we can no longer continue to say that all the potheads are sitting at home on their couch because they're out instead doing a 5K or 10K or walk around town lake at least. So Greg is helping us do that. And again, just all these causes, all these movements are overlapping, so nothing is exclusive. It's all inclusive to reach out. Thank you, Greg, for doing it.
Good afternoon, Texas NORML. I have to observe this group gets bigger, stronger, more vocal, more energized, and more diverse every time I'm here. And I'm so pleased to see the showing that we have today and to be here speaking with you this afternoon. As Cheyenne mentioned, I'm the athletics director. Thank you. I'm the athletics director for Texas NORML's Fitness and Athletics Club, Team Hope Through Cannabis, also known as THC, or as the acronym, or Team THC. What we do charity walks and races around Austin. We attend sporting events, usually wearing our THC gear. And we plan big outreach, fundraising, and education events. all of which I'll tell you more about in a little bit. So what we aim for, we try to outreach with the broader community outside of people in our network and build these relationships, build our network. We also aim to build relationships with active people and with athletes, both amateurs and professionals. And we aim to break stereotypes, which Cheyenne alluded to. And I don't think I need to really drive home that point of what kind of damaging stereotypes exist about physical activity and marijuana use. And ultimately, we aim to help the state of Texas establish better marijuana laws. I'm just curious, by a show of hands, how many people in here have ever played an organized sport? How many people carve out time in your lives, you make it a point to exercise? So just based on this small sample size, I think we can see that sports and fitness are a large part of our society. They have been for a long time, and they're not going anywhere. So what we aim to do, we know that this group of athletes, this group of people who are engaged in fitness activities are a large interest group. And we also know that there's a lot of crossover between people who have interest in seeing marijuana laws reformed. So out of the people who raise your hands, I'm sure that there are at least a few of you who have experienced being blocked from participating in sport or physical activity due to marijuana prohibition and or drug testing. Also, I'm sure that there are at least a few of you who use marijuana to treat pain, sports-related injury, or related medical conditions. On that last point, you may have noticed that the issue of marijuana use in sports is quite a hot topic right now in the media and in other places. And for one example, I'll talk a little bit about the NFL, and you may have seen some stories coming out in relation to that issue and NFL players using marijuana for various reasons. The NFL commissioner recently said, "We will follow medicine, and if they determine this could be a proper usage in any context, we will consider that." And I think if the commissioner really looks into it, he will find that there are certainly proper usages for this substance, whether it's medical or recreational. The coach of the Super Bowl champion Seattle Seahawks took it a few steps further and said, "I would say we have to explore and find ways to make our game a better game and take care of our players in whatever way possible. Regardless of what other stigmas might be involved, we have to do this being medical marijuana, making it available, because the world of medicine is doing this." So he's recognizing that marijuana has medicinal value and it needs to be available to players. This is the coach of the Super Bowl champions. Antonio Cromartie of my favorite team, the New York Jets, said they need to just let it go. We're just going to do it anyway. They just need to let it go. They need to go ahead and say, y'all go ahead, smoke it, do what you need to do. I agree with him personally. Ryan Clark of the Pittsburgh Steelers said, "There are guys on my team who use it recreationally. A lot of it is stress relief. A lot of it is pain and medication. Guys feel like, if I can do this, it keeps me away from maybe Vicodin, it keeps me away from pain prescription drugs and things that guys get addicted to. Guys look at this as a more natural way to heal themselves, to stress relieve, and also to medicate themselves for pain. Guys are still going to do it, whether it's permitted or not." And then to sort of sum it up, I think that former NFL player Nate Jackson really says it best. He says, "The NFL should remove marijuana from their banned substances list. Don't tell anyone about it, just stop testing for it. Pain is a big problem in the NFL. Pain management is necessary. Weed is the least harmful and least addictive of the painkillers players use to cope with the violent demands of the game." So whether the use is medical, recreational, or any other purpose, we should also keep in mind what the Olympic Charter says about the practice of sport being a human right. I figure this is a timely issue because the Olympics are going on right now. The Olympic Charter says the practice of sport is a human right. Every individual must have the possibility of practicing sport without discrimination of any kind, and in the Olympic spirit, which requires mutual understanding with a spirit of friendship, solidarity, and fair play. I think personally that the war on marijuana violates human rights in many ways. It violates our right to individual liberty and personal freedom. It violates our right to safety and security in our own communities. It violates our right to private property. And as the Olympic Charter essentially alludes to, based on my interpretation, it also violates our right to participate in athletics. So this is a core part of our message, and this is what we're out telling people at Town Lake, or at a local 5K, or at an Austin Aztecs soccer match. Millions of Americans either take an interest in or participate in sport. Millions of Americans also consume marijuana. Look at Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, by all measures, one of the greatest basketball players to ever play the game, is a registered medical marijuana patient in California. Look at Ross Rabagliati, who was the first person to ever win a gold medal for snowboarding in the Olympics, and had his medal taken away from him, and then subsequently reinstated because marijuana was determined not to be a performance-enhancing drug. But the Olympians who fail drug tests currently will still likely have their accomplishments taken away from them, and that's not right. Or look at Michael Phelps. Everyone knows about Michael Phelps. This is the most successful Olympic athlete in history, and he engaged in marijuana use and may still continue to engage. But the point is, this is someone who used or uses marijuana in his life, and there's no reason that his accomplishments should be discolored by his participation in this activity. These notable celebrity examples are extremely significant for our cause, and we need to continue to encourage public figures to be honest and transparent about their beliefs and personal stake in marijuana and marijuana policy. The website Marijuana Majority, if you've ever been on that, is really great for that. But I think THC's greatest strength is in building relationships with the local fitness and athletics community and facilitating their involvement in broader Texas NORML activities like advocacy and education. So with that mission in mind, I'd like to tell you a little bit about some upcoming events that we have and opportunities for you to be involved with Team Hope for Cannabis. Next weekend, on Saturday, March 1st, at 2 p.m., we're going for a brisk walk around Lady Bird Lake in Austin. So we're meeting up by the Lamar pedestrian bridge. We'll probably loop around the Congress Bridge, which will add up to a couple miles of spring training for some of our other big events which are coming up later this spring. So you're encouraged, if you want to come out, to wear your THC gear or something with a pot leaf to get our message out there. And that gear will be available at the after party today. It's also available on the Texas NORML website. So the idea behind this, again, is to spread our message of reform to other hikers and bikers on the trail, network and socialize with fellow THCers, and to exercise. So we hope to see you out there next weekend on Saturday, March 1st. This next event is the big one. This is the one I'm most excited for. And this is our golf, music, and arts benefit at Willie Nelson's Peter Nolly's Cut and Putt, which is a golf course in Spicewood, Texas. This is on Saturday, March 22nd. We have a golf tournament. We'll also have casual disc golf available all day and 2 scheduled rounds of golf to choose from, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. A variety of vendors will be available, including barbecue and veggie options, along with music and comedy performances throughout the event. It's BYOB, no glass, so we just encourage you to join us out there for a day of fun. You absolutely do not have to partake in any of the athletic golf, disc golf activities, and there's a registration option for people who just want to come out and enjoy the vendors, enjoy the live music, and network and socialize with the Texas NORML network. And that registration option is only $15. So it's all about having fun, being active in the great outdoors, spending time with your friends, getting involved in some other community businesses and organizations. We have some really cool sponsors lined up for this event. And raising funds for Texas NORML's Veterans Summit, which is being held on July 19th of this year. And our next speaker is going to tell you more about the activities of Texas NORML's Veterans Group and that event coming up on July 19th. So just to drive home the point of how special this upcoming event is on March 22nd, Willie Nelson's Cut and Putt is not your average golf course. There's no dress code. A recording studio is attached to the pro shop, and it's been owned for over 30 years by a widely recognized American music icon. Willie Nelson and his family take great pride in the course. It's only 8 songs away from Austin, and we're really excited to be doing this event. So there's more information available out there on the Texas NORML website. Encourage you to register, get your tickets now. It's likely to sell out, and it's going to be one of our signature events this upcoming spring. We have a really cool live music lineup, music going on all afternoon. We've got the band Omnicolor Waves on one of our audience members. We'll be playing. So that's the Willie Nelson's Cut and Putt on March 22nd. And lastly, we have an event that we do every year coming up on April 4th, and that's the Statesman Capital 10K. And it's a 10K in downtown Austin. It starts on the south side, loops around the Capitol, goes west, and then comes back down to near where the Statesman building is located. One thing that I'm particularly excited about in relation to this event is that it benefits Safe Place, which is an agency dedicated to ending sexual and domestic violence through safety, healing, prevention, and social change in Austin and Travis County. And I think this ties in because, like Noel said, it's okay for us to say marijuana is safer than alcohol. And that is more true now than ever. And we know that alcohol is a contributing factor to sexual violence, to domestic violence, and that marijuana is not. So we have a real opportunity here to build some relationships, build bridges, and get a spirit of collaboration going with people who are sick of seeing alcohol being essentially promoted over something that is a much safer alternative than that particular choice. So I think we definitely have some common ground with them, and all proceeds from the 10K event benefit that great organization. So the event is family friendly. There's also a kids 1 mile run and a half-mile family fun run and walk. So the registration is up online. We have a Facebook event page for it. And it's an early morning event, so be prepared for that, and you'll want to get training, I would recommend. But you can also walk the event. People choose to do that as well. It's up to you. So those are our events for the next couple months. I strongly encourage your participation. I thank you very much for your time and attention. Please like Team Hope Through Cannabis on Facebook and sign up for our email updates. And in conclusion, I'd like to see if we can get a Go THC on 3. So, 1, 2, 3.
Go THC!
Bring up is Dave Bass. He's been with the group, it's hard to believe, only a year because he really just took off strong. Dave is a veteran, is a former soldier, is a teacher, and is living in Killeen and commutes so often to Austin to help us. We really appreciate him. And the veterans aspect brings so much to us in Texas and helps in such a huge way, more so maybe in some states, because our legislators do love the veterans. So every angle is a good angle, especially whenever they're very receptive to it. And the VA is the only federal agency, or was at least the first federal agency, to basically get out of the way of medical cannabis in other states. And Dave will tell you more about that, and it's a great resource. But it's a good thing to point out to our lawmakers that it is only the state of Texas that is preventing our veterans, at least, from engaging in medical cannabis use in the states. In the states where it's legal, they're letting them. So they're not in the way. In Texas, it's our legislators, whereas so often they try to point to the federal government and say, well, we can't do that because of this. That's not necessarily true for veterans, and Dave will tell you more about that. Because in fact, one of the first retail purchases in Colorado, I don't know, I just thought about this when I was sitting over there. Now Colorado is making retail sales PTSD isn't covered by many of the medical laws, and one of the first retail purchases was by a veteran, and that was very public. So it's a good angle that we're looking at, and he's a very good speaker on it. So thank you, Dave.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. I'm David Bass, Director of Veterans Outreach for Texas NORML. I served in the U.S. Army for 21 years. I retired in 2006. I'm a veteran of Desert Storm and Operation Iraqi Freedom. I am 60% disabled, 30% for chronic pain from injuries I received in the Army, and 30% for PTSD. I use cannabis as an alternative medication to the addictive and dangerous pain meds the VA gives veterans, and as an alternative medication for the psychotropic drugs the VA gives vets who are diagnosed with PTSD. When I enlisted in the Army, I swore an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States. Our Constitution establishes a republic for our country whereby the majority rules. So why am I violating the law established by legislators who were elected by the majority of voters in our state of Texas? The reason is that this law is unjust. Henry David Thoreau, when he refused to pay a tax to support an unjust war against Mexico, referred to the tyranny of the majority. Thoreau, in his essay Civil Disobedience, expressed the idea that when the majority attempts to enforce an unjust law, it is the right of moral citizens to resist that law. In 1963, Dr. Martin Luther King, in his letter from the Birmingham jail, stated that there are two types of laws, just laws and unjust laws. Dr. King said one has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. Dr. King quoted St. Augustine and said an unjust law is no law at all. What was the test? Dr. King stated any law that uplifts human personality is just. Any law that degrades human personality is unjust. We say that the laws against marijuana in the state of Texas are unjust. Why can't I and thousands of veterans who suffer from chronic pain and PTSD, men and women who served our country honorably and defended the freedom of all United States citizens, use a medication that is safe, that is effective, that is not addictive, and has never resulted in a single death from overdose? One, telling us that we cannot use cannabis is unjust. We refuse to obey. And we will not rest until we change this unjust law. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for joining us in this fight for justice. We will win. We will achieve justice in Texas. We would like to invite you to the Texas NORML Veterans Conference at the Carver Library on July 19th, Saturday from 11 o'clock to 5 p.m. We will discuss issues related to veterans and cannabis. We hope you can make it. We hope you pass on this information to your veteran friends and family members. We will post more information on our Texas NORML Facebook page and on our website, so watch for that. And we hope that all the veterans will join us for Lobby Day in 2015 when we go up to the Capitol and we visit our legislators and we explain why veterans in Texas need to be able to have access to cannabis legally without fearing arrest. Yes. Our legislators need to look veterans right in the eye and tell us why we don't deserve that right. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Dave. That's so quick. Efficient. Look at the military man. Efficient. Something we all learn from, myself included. Thank you, Dave. And we have several other directors, members, volunteers, supporters in the audience and over here on their computers. So definitely our outreach groups do not represent everyone that's doing this work and are not the only outreach groups we need. So If there is a need that you know you can help with, please talk to one of us afterwards. Because we definitely want to grow our group and spread our reach and minimize the amount of things we're each focusing on so we can do more and be more effective on it with those goals. So please do let us know if you can volunteer to help. Our next guest speaker, JC Dufresne, came from San Antonio, and he's going to talk a little bit about how he got involved on a deeper level, I guess I should say, than what we're talking about so far. And if you're willing to do that, how you could do so as well. He's been his precinct chair. He had led a group to change the Democratic Party platform to include marijuana legalization. And just so you all know, this is, and I'll emphasize this more later, but this is not a party issue. And I think getting it on the Democratic Party platform is something that now we can use to talk to them about, but it's something that that the other party needs to do too, and there is a group working for that. So we're definitely not trying to say we need to be Democratic because they did it. We're saying this is happening everywhere, and there is a Republican group working to do the same that you can get involved with as well. Thank you, JC.
My eyes on so I can see what I'm doing here. As Cheyenne pointed out, well, I'm going to tell this story from the point of view of the Democratic Party. The policy or the methods for doing this are roughly the same in any party in the state of Texas because of the way the laws and the parties are structured. So I should also tell you I'm involved in a number of things that are also nonpartisan, and I don't mean to focus on this and suggest, as she pointed out, that this is all about why you should be a Democrat. This is really a nonpartisan talk. First of all, I'm honored to be with such a civically engaged group of people. You all have shown a great deal of interest. There's a bunch of smart people in this room, and I'm proud to be here and thankful that you all invited me. I'm your ally because prohibition is simply a destructive policy. I'm not one who's interested in consuming. I don't drink, I don't smoke. It's just my nature. You know, when I was in high school, I was the kid that they made fun of with all the cool kids in the room, and I got a little stone at the end of my senior year with a little marijuana leaf on it and a little hole drilled through it, and I didn't know what it was. That was the way that I came across there. Well, you know, I just look at this as being just bad policy. And there are a lot of people in this world that I work with and that I've associated with that would agree with me on that point, even if they're not as interested in it as you are. So what I'm saying is that there are a lot of folks that are your allies that may not have the same view of marijuana as you do. That's okay. We're all in this to achieve the same end. And that's what's important. So one of the things that I wanted to do when I ran for the State Democratic Executive Committee a few years ago was to rile up the base. And to that end, I wanted to see a number of ballot referenda on the 2012 primary ballot because we hadn't done anything like that in a while, and the opposing party was doing that with any number of issues, and I wanted to see some of you folks get interested in coming out and voting in the primary, you and your friends. I wanted it for the death penalty, I wanted it for LGBT groups, and other really deeply important issues that we have in the state. So I reached out to a variety of groups. I had run across Amy Jo somewhere along the line in the process of doing that, and we discussed what it would take to put together a good resolution to bring up to the State Democratic Executive Committee to ask that such a thing be put on the ballot, because there's a particular process that you have to go through. And that process is that a resolution is submitted to the Resolutions Committee. The Resolutions Committee reviews it. If it is voted out of that committee, then the full State Democratic Executive Committee reviews it again. And if indeed that resolution is approved, then it can be put on the primary ballot. Well, in our case, along with the LGBT and the abolish the death penalty resolutions, decriminalizing or legalizing marijuana was not passed through the committee. However, there is another process. If you are having 25% of the committee agrees with your referendum item or your resolution, you can put forth a minority report in full committee. And this follows Robert's Rules of Order, which both parties do. And in that process, we got an opportunity to bring it before the full State Democratic Executive Committee. That's made up of 2 members from each senatorial district, the same way as the Republican Party. The 2 members of the state Senate districts. There are 31 Senate districts in the state of Texas. There's 1 male and 1 female in the Democratic Party. I'm not sure about the Republicans. You are elected to that post at the state convention, and I'll go into a little bit more detail on that later. And the reason is I want you to know that there is a way for you to become more involved in party politics to get what you're interested in. So among these executive committee members, we found that roughly, through the process of bringing these topics up, a quarter of them, much like in the resolutions committee, were supportive of this issue, as they were of marriage equality and abolishing the death penalty. So the membership varied a little bit, but in general, that became the progressive core of the group. So after having identified those people, we knew we had some group to work with. Just like you all have developed a group to work with through your associations, that's how you became familiar with one another and how you got to be in this room. Is somebody spoke up, you recognized the fellow that agreed with you, and you have then proceeded to associate more closely and work with them. So we had our little group. Continuing to work with Amy Jo, and I met Steve Nolan, who's a TX NORML member out of Houston, and we continue to build on our efforts to make this process move forward. Since it didn't get on the referendum, on the ballot, another friend of mine, who is a member of the Stonewall Democrats, Dan Graney, was a member of the Resolutions Committee, and in the rules, we found that there's another way to use some of what we were doing to get things put on the party platform. And that's another thing that you can do on either party's platform. There's 2 ways, in fact. First is, you can get 35,000 signatures, thereabouts, because it depends on how many people voted for your candidate for the governor of Texas in the last election. But in our case, it was 35,000 voters. If we could have got 35,000 voters to sign a petition asking for this item to be put on the party platform, it would go to the party's platform committee, and they would be required to review it and discuss it and possibly put it on the platform. Well, in our case, trying to find 35,000 people in that period of time probably would have been more of a task than we could have managed. But the other way is to pass it through the state party conventions, which are coming up very soon. So after the primary, March 4th, unlike in the past where we've had precinct conventions that evening, we will do everything in a county convention this year, which is where this resolution would have had to have been passed anyway. And if you wish to work on this, if you will attend your county convention, which you can sign up for at the state party website. Not sure what the process is for the Republican Party, but they are open to anyone attending if you are a voter in their primary or you sign an oath of allegiance to that particular party. In any case, attend party convention in your area. It will be either in your county or your Senate district. If you have Senate districts that are a county rather, like Travis, which is broken up into multiple Senate districts, then depending on which particular one you live in, you might go to a particular area, or they may hold it all in one area, one particular facility, and be broken up into several segments. In any case, you have an opportunity to put forth a resolution that will require or ask the Democratic Party to continue to keep the decriminalization language on the state party platform, which is what Amy Jo and I are working to do this time around, is to maintain it. The reason we're not going any further than that this time around is that when I proposed putting legalization on it, a person whom I hold in esteem and who has great political savvy and has contacts with certain statewide candidates came to me very politely and asked me not to endanger the chances of that particular candidate from winning the election this time around, because while they understood and actually agreed with the policy and would be your friend in that case, their view of this was that they didn't know how to message it. They don't know the language to go out there and use to not get bashed in public. So for the time being, we're going to just hold on with decriminalization on the party platform is the tack that we're going to take. I would hope that those of you who are interested in party politics in any way, even if it is solely because of this issue, that you will attend your convention and in either side and put forth a resolution related to this, because that's one way to move it forward. It's important to have it on any party's platform because it tells the activists and it tells the elected officials and the candidates what's important to the party. If you're going to run for elective office and you're deciding on what you're going to run on, what means something to people, what you should be talking about, a good place to start is a party platform, because those are things that the will of the people have expressed interest in. So this is just one step along the way of getting the message out that this is an important topic. I've been jumping around on my notes, so forgive me for a second. I don't really want to hold you all up, and I don't want to miss anything.
I think we have time. We'll do Q&A between you and the next speaker.
Okay. In this process, once it gets out of the county conventions, then anything that is passed that way goes to the temporary platform committee. And the temporary platform committee is created or assigned by the party chair. That person, those persons sit down and work through the new material and the old party platform and try to come up with their proposed revised platform. That platform will be largely in the shape that it will end up out of the entire process when they're finished with it, but it isn't fine-tuned. It's a rough draft, let's say. So the next opportunity that you would have to get involved in it is if you have attended your county convention and you have nominated yourself or had someone else nominate you to be a delegate to the state convention. You would have an opportunity then to participate in the Senate District Caucus that's held on the Friday afternoon of the state convention. The reason you might want to be involved in that is because that group names, among other people, one committee member to the permanent platform committee. Those are the people that write the final draft of the party platform. So you would, should you want to take it that far, you would want to be on that platform committee if you can convince the people in that room that you should be the person elected to that position. If you want to run for that, then you probably don't want to overemphasize your interest in this particular topic because you'll sound like a one-issue person. And trust me when I tell you that that isn't going to get you very far in most cases. In most Senate districts, they're going to look for somebody that is interested in promoting a wide variety of progressive topics. So you want to bring forth your other interests, the other things that you are concerned about when you talk about it. I'm not saying don't bring up legalization. I think that would be something you certainly want to make sure you bring up, and how active you are in that topic is important. They want to know that you're an activist. It doesn't really matter what you're an activist at, that you're an activist. That's what's important, because then they know you understand you're one of them. But you also want to talk about the other things that matter to you. If you are elected to that party platform committee, that permanent platform committee, you will have an opportunity to shape the platform on a wide range of topics, this one included, to make sure that at least decriminalization stays on that platform. While you're having that discussion, there's likely to be at least one state legislator in that room with you at that time, because they are usually part of that process. They want to know what's going on. They want to hear from the people in that room why things are important, the language that they're using to express themselves, because it gives them something to work on later. So you may have an opportunity in a way that you would not otherwise to be heard by a state legislator, somebody that's a leader in that particular party. So it's an opportunity that is well worth taking advantage of. The county conventions, which is the next step that you would have an opportunity to participate in, are March 22nd. The Democratic Party state convention is June 27 and 28 in Dallas. The Republican convention, I think, is going to be a little earlier. I'm not sure where it's located, but I think they're in Dallas this time around as well. As I mentioned earlier, this is not something where I'm suggesting that one party or another is better. We just got a little further with the Democratic Party than the Republicans have so far. So another way that you can advocate in a political sphere is to volunteer for candidates, even in the primary, before they even become the final candidate for their particular party. Because when you are working for that candidate, you're going to have an opportunity to talk to them from time to time, especially if you're volunteering out of their headquarters where they're running their campaign and doing phone banking and the like. You'll have an opportunity to interact with them. You get an opportunity to be introduced to somebody that has been working hard for their campaign. And that's going to give you an opportunity to bring up your issue to them right then and there. Don't push too hard yet. They're worried about getting elected. Once they're elected, and they've met you, and you can go into their office, either in their district or in the Capitol, and remind them that you were there when they were running for that position in the primary or in the general election. You worked for their campaign, and you're here to talk to them about whatever the topic is, whether it's legalization, decriminalization, medical use, or something else entirely. The point is, you have their ear in a way that most constituents do not, because you put forth the effort to help them get where they are. And any of them that are honorable are going to recognize your contribution to that. They want to hear from you, and they're willing to listen to you. You may not always change their view, but you may soften the blow. So if this is somebody that is anti, like Mr. Workman mentioned earlier, if you have worked on his campaign, you may at least be able to soften the blow when he goes to vote against it. Maybe he won't advocate against it. He'll just vote against the bill. Maybe that's enough to keep somebody else from voting against it. They'll go for it because Workman didn't go and lobby against it. So all of these things are ways that you can achieve your ends through the political process because you became known. As a final thought, all we accomplished during the process of getting this on the state party platform occurred because a handful of committed people took the bull by the horns. We worked to draft language that was effective. We communicated with like-minded folks in the party, and we kept at it after an initial failure. You guys have been keeping at it for over a decade, and I commend you for that. And look how far we've come already. This process is snowballing, and this is an opportunity that you have right now to push that snowball a little further, make it a little bigger, and make it unstoppable. And I hope you'll take that opportunity. If y'all have any questions, I'll be more than happy to try to answer anything that you have about how the political process works from the standpoint of party politics. And again, like I said, it's either party, they work very much the same. There are just some rules different from here and there.
I think there's a question.
Is there all those dates listed down on the web someplace we can go look at?
I'm sorry, not
The dates that you were talking about?
The county convention.
Oh, Senate district conventions, county conventions. Each county or Senate district has a county convention or Senate district convention on March 22nd. If you go to, in the case of the Texas Democratic Party, there is a website, txdemocrats.org, and in there you can register to participate in your convention in your area, and it will tell you when you sign up where that event will be. If you choose not to go, for whatever reasons, no big deal. You registered, you let them know that you were at least potentially interested. You'll get an email that will say when and where to attend. It can't hurt to try, and just be aware that you'll start getting email from whichever party that happens to be that you sign up with, because now they know how to get in touch with you. Yes, sir.
I mean, are you really positing that we put all of our energies behind the two parties that have been enforcing this for the past 60 years?
No, I'm telling you that if you're interested in one of those two parties, then participate. If you're not interested in those parties,
the Republicans and the Democrats are exactly why the people of my generation are not voting right now. We have to move past this party politics, red, blue, like.
Well, if you notice how we spoke earlier on the committee where we did have a bill pass out of it, it was bipartisan.
Okay.
If you take a look at our Texas NORML voters guide, you'll see that most of the people who responded there were pro-cannabis and they were mostly libertarian. There are independents running and Green Party. So you find what your group is that you are interested in and you figure out how to affect change there. He's telling us more about the established political parties and how they function on the inside. So like I personally work with libertarians a lot, and so I know that they don't have a primary to choose their people with.
Right.
They have a convention.
And that's a huge barrier when you get past the traditional parties that put in place.
Yes, so that's a different subject. We're currently talking about cannabis law reform and how you can affect
So
on.
me personally, I support the Mushroom Tea Party, and that's what I started in January.
Well, then you work with them and you change
So we have the
things like
Constitution
that.
from the right, social justice from the left, and we can move forward.
I'll bring up one quick thing on that, and this is not to be argumentative at all, because I actually agree with you in a lot of respects. I'm doing this not because I'm red team, blue team. It's because right now I'm on this team because this is the one that I think can get something done.
For sure.
And I will tell you that the reason that we had so much trouble getting all of these topics that I talked about on the state party platform or on the referenda, it's not because people don't believe in it. They're afraid that they will lose the election. Trust me when I tell you, this is all about winning. This has nothing to do with whether it's good policy.
See, that's why I don't want to give them, if it's all about winning, like, that's not what I want in power.
Well, we
I
can
don't want
talk-
people in power that are all
We can
about
discuss that after the
I'm just saying,
training
like,
camp.
I think there's a better way to go about it. It's fine with me.
And I think you have
decide for I just want to make a point too, because we just got out of a meeting with a black female Republican candidate for governor who is pro-medical marijuana. We're in special needs, we're with autism and epilepsy and some other, and we're going to be the ones to help pave this way. Epilepsy is going to be the push, okay? And when I'm talking to a black female gubernatorial candidate who says I'm pro-medical marijuana and I'm publicly coming out with that, everything has changed. Her name is Lisa Pritch. She has to make it through the primaries, but she's not the only one. And we're gonna take this into churches, and we're gonna get the establishment behind this. So I just want all of you to know that what he said, it's gotta come from all ways. Your Mushroom Tea Party and your thing over there, and so-and-so, and us working in the churches, and this is happening, and it's happening right now.
I have an idea that can address that. All available avenues.
Yes.
All available avenues. Everybody has their own brand. Go the way that you're going to go, and don't worry about anybody else.
And we'll have time for more discussion for everybody to talk afterwards at the informal after party at Strange Brew. But actually our keynote speaker has just arrived.
Thank you, Stacy, for coming. And before we bring up our next speaker,
Q&A. We will have Q&A. But I do want to remind everybody that all of the speakers that are speaking, everyone is not going to agree with or resonate with everything that they talk about. We're not all patients, we're not all veterans, we're not all seniors, we're not all Democrats or Republicans or Libertarians or any specific party, and that is the point, that we're not trying to convince everybody to be everything that we are or everything that we believe. We're trying to find that common ground with everyone and work in whatever our ways are, in whatever our own individual ways and means and resources and time and everything to achieve the same goal. So it's a much broader goal to get everyone to think the way that you do and to do things for your reasons or to join your party or whichever. So we're just trying to educate everyone about all the different avenues. And I've been telling people, and I hope to get a video that actually shows this, but imagine if you were all trapped in a room, if we were trapped in this room together and every one of you thought that you had the best way out. Is that the only way you would try? Or if somebody else was getting out through another way, would you not help them because that way seemed like maybe it was working? I would help them because if my goal is to get out, I don't care how. So, with that, we're going to bring up our keynote speaker in a moment, and I think that he is demonstrating for us that very thing, that this is not a party issue. He has been an advocate for legalization for cannabis and hemp as an agricultural commodity, and he has run for office on numerous occasions over the past 30 years for both parties, for Democrat, for Republican, and as an independent. So this issue, if this is the issue that we're trying to work on, it is not a party issue. It is not a specific demographic issue or just health or just enjoyment or just preventative. It's everything, and many people are using or believe that it should not be a crime for different reasons. Appropriately, I think Kinky Friedman is campaigning now to be our next Commissioner of Agriculture, and I think that's very appropriate with the new industry we are certainly facing. Coming to Texas as it is everywhere for hemp, for cannabis, used in many different ways, and we certainly need an agricultural commissioner that will point out the tens of thousands of acres of land, of farmland that could be usable in Texas and is not being used. Because I think that's something that hemp could be grown on, possibly. So it's good that this is a campaign issue, and I think that's what we're moving towards, and that's what we want to see. Regardless of which party you are for, what we want to see is this is a campaign issue. We want to see it, the wets versus the dries version of today for cannabis. That's what it was in the Prohibition era whenever they were repealing alcohol prohibition. You had politicians that weren't called just Republicans and Democrats. They were called wets and dries because it crossed party lines, and there were some on both sides that were for or against. So let's not worry about whether everyone wants the exact lifestyle or party as we do. Let's worry about achieving our goals. That's what we need to be doing on this issue anyway. And we really appreciate Kinky Friedman coming. I look forward to meeting. I understand he's not able to stay for the after party, but I would love to hear what he has to say while we are here, and we'll do Q&A afterwards and address questions for all of the speakers.
I'm going to dance.
Thanks.
Hello, I'm David Dewhurst. I'm 69 years old, though I read at the 71-year-old level. And I've got my last will and testament worked out. When I die, I'm to be cremated, and the ashes are to be thrown in Rick Perry's hair. A few weeks ago, I was showing some out-of-state friends around Austin, and one of them said, "Hey, that's a beautiful statue of Rick Perry you all put up there." And I said, "That is Rick Perry." That's kind of what's happened with the Agriculture Commissioner's office. It's become a Republican stepping stone. And while I got nothing against the last occupant, they just keep moving up the ladder. And like all politicians, they don't do a damn thing. They talk a lot. And we get nothing done. So what I'm asking myself is it good for Texas? That's the question that you want to ask. And I noticed no other candidate appears to be mentioning pot or hemp, even though we made this the centerpiece on the table, the two centerpieces. For example, what country do you think is the world's #1 hemp producer? Do you know?
China.
China is correct. And who do you think is their biggest customer?
U.S.
No, it's Willie Nelson. It's the U.S., of course. Now, Texas could have and should have and still can take over the #1 role producing hemp. Anybody who cares about water and conserving water should be interested in growing hemp. This is not a Republican or Democrat thing. This is not a left or right issue. And it's shocking to me that all they will talk about is education. That's what Wendy's talking about. That's what David Dewhurst is talking about. Meanwhile, we're 49th in education.
Yeah.
Thank God for Alabama. And ironically, pot, of all things, lifting the prohibition on pot, could fund education. So I'm not talking about it, I'm telling you how we fund it. Now, I've had some strange people in my life. I've learned a lot of things since I started this campaign. And that is, one of them is that you can go up to the most redneck deputy sheriff any place in Texas and ask him, and he will be for legalizing pot. 99 times out of 100. I've yet to meet a law enforcement guy who doesn't think we're losing the war on drugs really badly. And they think that we should legalize. And those are the ones I've talked to. I talked to an 85-year-old man in Medina, Texas, the old guys that drink coffee in the morning. He says he's for legalizing pot because it would effectively castrate the Mexican drug cartel.
Yep.
And he is not wrong, folks. It would make us the new cartel. The Texas cartel. Now, you may or may not know this. In 2010, according to the Dallas Observer, 74,000 nonviolent pot arrests were made in Texas. 74,000. The cost was $250 million to prosecute these, to the taxpayers. Then when these guys are incarcerated, I don't need to go into that with you, but as I think you know, once you're incarcerated for a year, a couple of years in a private prison chain, there's a hell of a lot of doors that close in your life. And you can go down for a job interview, and you can do a great interview, and they'll ask you, is there anything else you'd like to tell us? And you tell them you serve a little time in this, and you'll never get the job. And so cold facts are that these 74,000, we could have put them through Harvard cheaper than it cost us to incarcerate. In this group, there are 7 times as many Hispanics and African Americans as whites. So something is really wrong with this picture. It's not criminal justice, it's criminal injustice. And the green thread of agriculture runs through this criminal justice. Now you talk to cops, and they'll tell you every single night they get a call, some guy's had a few drinks and beat up his wife. And they've got to deal with his domestic mess. Now, they say they've never heard of a case of a guy smoking a few joints and beating up his wife. Because he forgets to beat up his wife. He picks up a bag of Doritos or something. So we've got criminal justice, we've got law enforcement. I hasten to mention that we have the finest cancer hospital in the world, MD Anderson, arguably, with absolutely no medicinal marijuana program. And I don't know what you think of Sanjay Gupta and the documentary he did, We. But the one thing that really interested me, on top of the amazing story of the little girl that was having 400 seizures a week, that was immediately down to 1. And now there's a whole pilot program of a bunch of kids that have epilepsy, is the Israeli scientist. I am a proud Red Sea pedestrian. And the fact is, in Israel, they're now serving up pot in the major hospitals in Tel Aviv for all kinds of patients. And of course they're giving it to people with Parkinson's, to people with Alzheimer's, to autistic kids, all of them. And with very, very good results. And the Israeli scientists have determined that pot kills cancer cells. Well, folks, I mean, if this be true, and I'm sure it is, CNN has to have some kind of fact checkers working on that. You can't just make a statement on it. So if the Israeli scientists are working on this, do you think America is working on this? It doesn't look like it to me. Texas certainly isn't. But if this turns out to be true, this is going to be the medical discovery of the century. And this is going to be, you know, the Nobel Prize for Medicine or something is going to go to the Israeli scientists, not to the American ones. All right, so I'm just sick of a top oncologist having to tell a chemo patient where he can get drugs. He would recommend, they're all out of pharmaceutical stuff, it doesn't work, he would say, go to East Austin. That's basically what they tell you. And that's a disgrace. Now, when Prohibition happened the first time, the turf wars ended immediately. I'm not saying that that would happen here. I am saying that the border would clean up enormously. And I think the turf wars there would really, really drop. And I mean, I don't think it would kill the cartels, but I think they'd move on to something else. So from every standpoint that you look at it, from education, from the environment, from the fact that hemp puts nutrients into the ground, and cotton doesn't. And that cotton uses up 25, you know this stuff, it uses 25% of the pesticides in the world go to cotton. Yeah? Zero pesticides are going. Now, I mean, folks, the farmers are going to get this. They already do. And I'm predicting in a year or two, if I win this thing, the Poteet Strawberry Festival might well be called something else. So let me just say, my detractors are mentioning that I'm not serious. Whenever I hear this a lot. I'm not serious, he's not serious, he's not serious, he's not serious. When I hear that, it makes me feel good. I mean, it makes me feel that they're worried, they're on and scared. And I will tell you that nothing's as serious as a comedian when he's telling the truth. And the truth is that I only smoke dope when I'm with Willie Nelson. I do not smoke it usually. I'm kind of like Waylon Jennings, who said pot is a lazy man's drug. Now Willie, when I visited him a few months ago in Hawaii, we smoked a lot of his pot. And I got over at his house, and I got so high I needed a step ladder to scratch my ass. And Willie should be a poster boy for pot, since he smokes like a truckload every day. He's never missed a note on stage or forgotten a lyric that I've seen. And as we were leaving his house, remember the man is what, 81 years old? He's got what they call, I guess, a speed bag, a punching bag about 6 feet off the ground in his garage. Willie just casually jumps up and just kicks the hell out of this speed bag. And then he tells me he's a black belt, he's a second degree, but it doesn't matter. Quite remarkable. So, and of course, then I had a reporter, a young guy, ask me last week, do I think I could get Willie Nelson to do something that would help agriculture? I thought, well, look, this guy's whole adult life, he's been giving to Farm Aid, an organization that he set up, which gives money to small farmers. And he's done more than all the ag commissioners put together. And when you think of ag commissioners, there are some really weak ones, and there are some that, but they're all pretty traditional. We have not really had a proactive ag commissioner in a long time. In fact, the last ag commissioner I remember, Reagan Brown, was before Hightower. He called a big press conference with television cameras, and he put his hand into an ant bed and determined to leave it there for 5 minutes to prove that the fire ants had not reached Texas yet. And he went in an anaphylactic shock. Got an ambulance out there and took him to the hospital. Okay, so I'm pretty well wrapped up with this. I do think this, that young people need somebody in politics that they can look up to. And I intend to bring, as I told Willie, and he asked me why I'm getting back into politics, I said to bring courage, imagination, and common sense back to politics. And Willie said, that's what I've been missing. Nobody thinks that's, I don't know. All right, do we have any questions or any comment on this? Just to say that I'm feeling very, very good about this, that the cause is bigger than the candidacy. I don't see how we can lose, because I'm telling you, the Republicans get this, and if they don't get it, if I win this thing, March 4th, we've got 8 or 9 months just to show them the economics of it, which are so simple. Colorado, folks, is a little tiny pissant state. And they're making so much more than they ever dreamed they would make. And we can multiply that by what, 250, 300 times? We'll give you some idea of what Texas might do in terms of economic. And this is kind of important because I want Texas to do whatever the hell it wants to do. If you want to fix the border, you want to help Planned Parenthood, whatever the hell you want to do, you want us to have the power to do it. And the government right now is not doing that. The government is waiting for the feds to do everything, and they have a very arrogant attitude, our state government, which is, let Oklahoma have all the gambling revenues and Louisiana, and let Colorado have pot revenues, and California the medicinal marijuana revenues. We don't need them. Well, we evidently do need them, or we wouldn't be 49th in education. We were ranked 21st in education when I was in college. Now we're 49. That is something that certainly be fixed. So I'm just telling you, the green thread runs through all of our lives, runs through everything. We should clear out those prison cells of those people that are nonviolent pot arrestees. I mean, they should not be incarcerated, especially if you see that 7 times as many Hispanics and blacks are in that number. I mean, something's really wrong with that system. And, the last point I'll make, in closing, finally, is that Bill O'Reilly and Nancy Grace have both been commenting about the gateway drug. If we legalize this, every kid in high school will be smoking dope. Well, the gateway drug in Texas is beer, all right? That's number 1. It's not pot. And number 2, these kids, who raise their age a little to 24 years old, a 24-year-old kid in America has lived under 3 dope-smoking presidents his whole life. 24 years of dope-smoking presidents down the path. It's hypocritical to put this kid away. And I forgot the point just before that, which I kids are going to all be smoking dope. The truth is just the opposite. The truth is, if you got a kid and you don't want them to smoke dope and you don't want them to get a tattoo, well, you can lay down the law and say, it's against the law. No, I'm telling you right now, don't smoke dope and don't get tattoos. You can do that. Or you can tell them, look, I really wish you wouldn't do these things. You know, I hope you don't, because I'll be really disappointed. Please don't. You're going to do it. I hope you don't. Realize that the allure of doing the forbidden for young people is so damn strong to do it behind the backs of authority, whether it's you or the law. And the minute you make this stuff legal, many people will be as bored with it as you are listening to this. So they will. That's not a problem. So let me just say, let us do it now. We all feel it coming. We know we're going to legalize. But if we wait 15 or 20 years to do this, folks, we will be the dinosaur. I promise you. We will be the caboose on the train. And if there's any young people here today, the caboose is the last car.
Where do you think funding is coming, or who funds anti-legalizing marijuana? Where is that really coming from?
That would be private prison chains. Private prison chains would be funding ways lobbying for them. It would be Ortho, Monsanto, people like that that don't want him, for sure. And you know, that would be about it. And I'm convinced. Folks, we're the only state that wears jewelry in the shape of the state. Think about it. We're seen as stupid by most Americans. I mean, I think they think we're like Alabama. They do. And we're not stupid. It's a bipolar state. Okay, it's very progressive. It's very progressive. That's part of our charm. But the majority of the people are for this right now. They are for doing something different, which hasn't been done. Which hasn't been done in a hell of a long time. And don't just leave it to politics. You know my definition of politics. Poly means more than one, and ticks are blood-sucking parasites.